This conference will now be recorded.
Wow. All right, good afternoon and welcome to APA Kentucky's first ever online webinar. Thank you for taking time today to join us. I'm APA Kentucky President Brian Davis and I will be your host. Today's session, Applications of GIS and Project Development, it will be presented by HMB Professional Engineers. And it's our first of 4 online webinars that are part of the APA Kentucky Sponsor Spotlight Series. The APA Kentucky Sponsor Spotlight Series is a series of online continuing education opportunities during October, which is National Community Planning Month. This series will provide a look at some projects and planning topics of interest to planning professionals and officials across the state. We hope you're able to join us for more, including our next session on Monday, October 12th at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central. These sessions are CM certified and available for credit through the My APA section of planning.org. And I will post the link to the session over in the chat section after or during the course of this meeting, so that you can have that at your disposal. A couple of ground rules for the meeting. 1, be sure to keep your microphone muted unless you're asking a question. 2, you can turn your camera off if you'd like. And 3, feel free to use the chat function to ask questions as well, as we'll continue to monitor that in case you have any questions or want Lindsay or Jarrod to specify anything. So without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce Lindsay Walker and Jarrod Johnson from HMB Professional Engineers. Lindsay and Jarrod, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, we're super happy to be the first here of the guinea pigs on the webinar series going through here. So we will do the troubleshooting with technology and communications and all that. So we will learn as we go along this month on what we can do to get better at this and hopefully provide some really good sessions as we go through it. So I recognize most of y'all on the call here, and you probably know me from doing some of the conference planning. My background's been in planning and transportation and traffic engineering. I've worked with consulting for pretty much my whole career at this point, 18 years. And Jarrod has worked with me at the past Kimley Horn and now at HMB. Jarrod, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Lindsay. So I actually started, I've 4 years so far of experience, and that's been at 3 different organizations, I guess, which hopefully, sticking here for a while with Lindsay at HMB. So I started at KYTC in District 12 in Pikeville, and then when I was moving to Lexington, just so happened there was an opportunity with Lindsay at Kimley Horn. And then that's when I started getting into more planning. I was just strictly highway design and worked a little bit of construction as well. Found out that I actually really enjoy planning and the traffic side of transportation. So decided to continue that here at HMB with our planning and traffic team. So I'm really new to the planning field, especially just strictly, community planning, zoning, things like that. But I really enjoy it and I'm looking forward to doing it in the future.
Thanks, Jarrod. I feel like we've been a pretty good team working together over the last couple of years. And Jarrod has done an amazing job with, as we try to brainstorm and figure out different things we can do for our project development and for our clients. So he's put on, tried to translate some of our ideas and made some magic happen. Also wanted to say that looking at some of the conference evaluation forms and topics that might be of interest to folks in the past years, it seemed like there's always been an interest with having some transportation related sessions as well. So forgive us if this is a little bit more on the engineering-ish side of transportation. We've changed it a little bit to try to make it some ideas to add into the planning realm, but really we'd like for you to see some of the examples that we've done for project development, and hopefully maybe you just get some ideas as you walk away from this, or at the very least pay attention, and you can check off your box at the end that you get, I guess, an hour for your AICP credit. So win-win for everybody, right? What I'd like to say about our presentation here is I know we've gone through several in the past of GIS presentations. Kenton County PDS has put on several doing their updated plans or their comp plans, and really going away from paper documents to trying to have things contained in databases and online. So we've heard several presentations from them in the past. Logic does a lot with GIS database applications. So I know that there's probably a little bit more usage, I think, on the planning side than maybe what we've done on the engineering side. So we wanted to show you a few things, though, that we've started doing for project meetings and for public meetings, and just in general, some of our data management on the transportation side. So those are some of the things that we've tried to do with this application, and not just make it static maps, but also stuff that has interactive. I think that we've seen that a need for that at times during our meetings, that instead of pulling together a whole bunch of different documents and you have files over here and there, and you might have to go back to the office to answer some questions. This has been super helpful in having things very accessible, and it's not necessarily something that was a reaction to COVID. We started employing some of these into our meetings and our work before that, and we were just doing it in person. But it just kind of gave us that everything at our hands. And you do have to have Wi-Fi, I guess, to be able to connect to it, but a lot of people have hotspots or agencies have Wi-Fi. So we haven't had any trouble being able to do that in the past. So let's dive into the data management, the second tab. Where we started with some of this was really more, it was twofold, really. One part of it was in our highway group, and one of our project managers came to Jarrod and like, I know you got some GIS background, and I've got this idea that I've wanted to do was to provide a tool or an asset management tool for project managers to use that kind of contains lots of information in one spot. So he kind of just threw stuff at Jarrod and said, this is kind of my idea. What can we do? So Jarrod started, so I guess we said he was volunteered or voluntold to help develop this. We wanted something that offered functionality than just being a database, and we wanted to make it truly interactive. The cool thing about doing some of this is that it interacts with other agencies' GIS layers, so we can pull in like KYTC, and all those layers are active. We can pull in, we're working on a project for Owensboro, which I'll show in a little bit, and we can pull in their layers. So we can build upon existing information and not have to recreate it, but we also do create our own as well. We have, like on this map here, this is a pavement management rehab program. So that's one of our statewide contracts that we have with KYTC. And so having different projects across different districts and in different counties, it allows us to put information in on all of those. And as we'll go through this, you can see that we can pull different pieces of that out. So if you zoom into one of our projects, Jarrod, you can zoom in, click on it, and it'll pop up a box that shows what the different layers mean. So it might be a complete active project. And then that box there will pull up information about the project. So you can see it has the 6-year item number, the location, traffic, crash data, anything that might be associated with this. And this could be any number of different items that you might want to do on an asset management side, but you might be looking at, I don't know, different locations of poles or parks or zoning. We can do different things if you have different things. And for people going out in the field, that they can use this tool and input information into it. So you can go to that, and then Jarrod, if you want to click on the other thing where we drill down into the background data. So if you scroll down, then you can click on where you have additional information. We can house additional files on here. Yeah, the attachments or the more info. So this is what I was kind of talking about, that you might be flipping around and looking for, okay, well, I know we had some meetings on this previously. What did we say at this meeting? Well, it's got all that information housed in here. So we can go back to team meetings. We can go to the sign-in sheet, see who attended. So anything that's project associated, we can put in attached to that one specific point. So we can go off of that. And then if you want to see everything in a sampling, you can go through there and see we have the item number, and you can input stuff into that spreadsheet, and then you can also download it and get information in one snapshot. So we can have it on this interactive place, but then if we're developing a package of information to send to somebody, you can download it and print it out, and so it doesn't have to be like recreating additional information. What else have I been missing on this, Jarrod, about this tool?
I guess I'll just add that you can edit it directly in this map, whether it's on a computer or if you're in the field, like Lindsay was saying, you just go in here and edit. You can add new points. And then once you have all the information in here, you can go in this box and export it all to an Excel file. And that also works both ways. If you have an Excel file that you update, you can just basically go in and update the layer, and it'll work both ways. Another cool thing is that this is all filterable. So you can either search or filter by, whatever data that you want to filter it by. So it's very interactive and works on multiple platforms.
Thanks. And I see that there's a question in here about capturing wet weather crash data. You're going to love, there's so many different ways we can sort out the crash data. We also do a lot of stuff with the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We worked on it at the past company, and we'll be at our current company as well. So we deal with crash data on a regular basis with a lot of our planning transportation projects, and we'll show you in just a little bit a couple of the different maps that we've made and ways to showcase some of that data. So yes, we can capture pretty much anything project related in here and put it in there and sort it out. So if you have information that you want attached to it, we can do that. And I was going to note that from this data management, asset management side, what I was kind of referring to, that you can put in anything like the small cell towers. I was thinking back to some topics that we've had in the past with planning that might be asset management or location based. Jarrod attended a conference last week on some GIS applications, the camp conference, and you noted about the auxiliary dwelling units. You want to mention that, Jarrod?
Yeah, so Logic did a presentation last week about the short-term rentals and how they've been managing that in kind of a similar way with this, but it goes into a little more detail and offers an application for people to go and check whether their property is eligible based on the 600-foot short-term rental buffer policy, or if their neighbor is eligible or is breaking the policies on those. So it was a really cool application, and as far as planning goes, and would work well with this sort of application.
Just thought it'd be interesting to know. I know it's not necessarily our project examples, but there's some different things going on out there, and making sure people are aware of those and to take advantage of that. There was another, I think, cool layer that we were looking at as part of the environmental the other day for our I-64 project, which we'll get to a little bit later too. But where billboard signage was. And it was really neat to be able to go into KYTC, look at that, and see where all the existing signs are, information about them. So maybe if you're looking at, well, I don't want somebody to put up a billboard sign here because there's like all of these, or this area doesn't have it, you can easily access some of that information. So maybe getting a little bit off topic on here, but it's all those interesting pieces of information that are available. So let's go to number 3. Keep going through this. So I mentioned that we kind of had a two-part approach to this. The highway design kind of came in and said, well, we want something that's going to be that management tool side of it. Now on the planning side, it was probably back in December, January that we said, well, we want to do something a little bit different with our planning studies. So an example that we're going to be showing here is one that we were asked to do with the transportation cabinet for the AA highway, which is in northeastern Kentucky. So running from northern Kentucky to Ashland and to Grayson. So 120 miles of highway. They came to us and said, hey, we know that there's some issues along here. We really want to take a look at it and develop a plan to address the highway as more of a whole. And now if you think about it, 120 miles is a long corridor. Typically when we do studies like a small urban area study, we're looking at maybe a county and a smaller range of interested people, stakeholders, local officials. Now we're dealing with 6 different counties, all of the local judge executives, and dealing with the mayors of all the towns and a couple different ads. So trying to collect the input from a broad range of people like that, and not having the budget to do like a meeting with every individual location, we wanted to make it equitable to provide the opportunity to hear about the project and provide input to the project. So when we decided to have a couple of meetings, we said, well, let's make this a little bit more spatially based instead of word based. So being able to see the locations and collect input on that, we felt like was really important to us on this project. So what we did was we collected a lot of existing conditions information, and then we met with the individuals at the ads, took TV screens and said, hey, we'll show you how we can collect the information, and kind of walk them through it and have them put stuff in there at the meeting, but also show them how to do it so they could go back, and if they wanted to think about it and provide some input later, they could. So that worked for in person, but then later on, as we got into the COVID times and we had to do everything virtual, it still works that we could discuss and show people how to provide information to us, and then they could go back and do it on their own time. So if you want to zoom in there, Jerry, this is the example of just how some of the data points that they put in. If you click on the layers, you'll see some of the information. You can click on the layers spot, so we bring up the different types of information. That'll show you the input categories. So we were asking people to identify where there might be projects currently going on. I mean, we'll collect information from the existing highway plans, and we'll collect information from unsponsored or identified projects, but sometimes some of the communities have other projects going on, so we want to make sure we're collecting as much information as possible. The planned future developments, that's great information for us as we're trying to determine what the transportation need is. So tying that back to if there's some strong identification that they're going to build, put more industrial use somewhere or a medical complex, that would be great to know. For this instance, I'll say that we look to get some information at the first meeting, and sometimes it depends on who attends. We looked at a school location and there wasn't identifiable crash data, no geometric issues, all of those things that we would typically look at. But then later in the process, when we had another round of meetings, we're like, whoa, wait a minute, you didn't put a project here. Like, well, what's the issue? So we had to kind of have some back and forth on that. But anyways, having that information helps us be able to start to look at where there might be some locations that have issues and get that input. So we asked for where there might be things that they like on the corridor. We might want to replicate those. Or if there are locations where there's problems that they know of, that high crashes, then they can identify those. And the other thing that was helpful is that we do give them some context to put this in. So we show them the existing conditions, but if they're putting these points in, they can also see where there might be some existing projects. So there's different layers that they could click on and add if they wanted to. And it's not just putting a point in there, so they actually put that identifiable marker in there. If you click on one of those, you'll see that there's text identified with it. So they can type in what their comment might be, so we can have a little bit of additional information about what it specifically is, not that it's just a problematic location. And then the last thing that I'll bring up on this slide is that you can generate what the number of responses are, so some quick infographics. I think that's kind of nice and helpful too. So you don't have to go back, take all the survey results, and try to compile them. It'll go ahead and do that for you, so you can see how many weak places were identified, major traffic generators, all of that. So it kind of packages it up nicely in there. And there's a couple different ways of doing this too, that I know that if you get people that are putting place markers and they keep putting one on top of another, there's other tools that you can change it and make it look a little bit different, so they can just keep adding to the point. So it just depends on what kind of information that you want to collect and how you want to collect it. But there's a lot of different ways to tackle it through this ArcGIS tool and collect that information. So this was just an example of showing how we identified needs with the public or local officials. The next one we're going to go into is story maps that we used for planning studies. So story maps kind of sounds like what it is. It's kind of takes you through the history or the story of what you want to tell at your meeting, or something that you want to share with somebody. So I'm going to continue on with an example from the AA highway. This is a little bit further in the study process. But what we want to show here is that you can see across the top there that there's different tabs. So the overview, study review, all of those pieces. So we have information going across there, and that's our agenda for the meeting. The thing that we really liked about this is that go to the interactive map, and it'll bring up all the different pieces of information. So as we're sitting there and sharing things with the local officials, or using this similarly, if you click on the layers, you'll see all the different pieces of information that we have pulled for this. And like I said, some of these are layers that we're pulling from other sites. Other ones are ones that we created, like that dismissed locations. So we can click on that layer and it'll pop up, and then we can click on one of those points if we want to, and it'll provide the information. And it says on there the reason why that wasn't included for further evaluation. So it's helpful. I feel like it's a good tool. If somebody's really interested in a project and they want more information about it, then you've got a lot that you can work with there. I also understand sometimes we need to be careful about how much we're sharing with the general public. So we tried to be careful on that when we did our I-64 study, and made sure that everything was very explainable, clear, definable. So it was easy to go through the process on that. Let's see. So from the survey, if you go to the prioritization survey tab, Jarrod, you can see we did another survey on this one. This one was a little bit different than the first round of engagement. So we were asking people to identify the locations. So we took that information that we got from the first round and looked at where there might be issues based on the input, along with maybe geometrics, and if there were safety issues and kind of layered a lot of that stuff up. That's one of the great things about this, is that you can add each layer that you want to and look at it under different lenses. So you can compile the information that you want to see to try to identify problematic areas and put those together. So then we were able to identify spots and segments that we felt like those are places that we want to focus on for improvements. So the end result was improvement sheets, and we asked people to provide comment on those. So if you click on that, you can see there's a bunch of different locations. So they could pick a location, the information about that project is there, and then they can quickly decide, say which one they prefer on the concept, and then what their priority is for it. So we're trying to make it a very quick, easy process to click on the projects or the locations that they're the most interested in. And as you can see from the past map, that it's located spatially. So if they're interested in one county, then it's on there. The project sheet contains a lot of information about the project. So it's got the features, the issues, cost estimates, and conceptual design. So we've tried to keep it all in one spot there, and you can print off a sheet if you need to for just one individual project, or you can have the whole package for the AA highway. So trying to go from a different kind of a menu type approach and different perspective on that. Anything I'm missing regarding the AA highway, Jarrod, or shall we go over to Owensboro and show a little bit different project?
Nope, I think we're ready to go to Owensboro.
Okay. Hopefully this will pull up, because I've had a few issues with it, but going to a different part of the state, another study that we've been asked to work on is a new corridor study. So around Owensboro, it was identified that they wanted to look at some outer connectivity around Owensboro. So this is potentially a new route, or potentially using some of the existing roadways and upgrading those. We don't know yet. We're just kind of getting started on it. But you can see the study area identified there. And what I thought was kind of interesting maybe to this group is that the travel demand model and the land use component of it, we have a high focus on that for this study. Right now, one thing that's being undertaken is to update the Owensboro the MPO model. So we have new land use, and we have updated employment and zone, all that kind of information. So we've been trying to have meetings and discuss with different folks around the Owensboro area what trends we're looking at into the future, so we can try to do as much as we can projecting into the future, what the demand might be, so we can then look at what the needs might be from a transportation standpoint. And this is one of those cases where I said, well, we can pull different layers in. So maybe not necessarily the KYTC layers, but we have the Owensboro one. So we have the land use, if you can pull that one on, Jarrod. And that's one of our starting points, looking at what the existing land uses are. And we had this meeting to initially discuss what changes might be based on the existing land use, what your future land use map looks like, and tying it to the travel demand model changes. So then we can use that to look at where new routes might be. Then we could put in those routes with the travel demand model and see how much traffic would use it. And ultimately, what we'll end up doing is looking at a bunch of different segments here and doing some benefit cost analysis on them to really get an understanding of, if we're going to spend the money to do this connectivity, what kind of does the return look like, and are we going to get a return on it? Are we over one for that benefit cost? So I thought that might be kind of interesting to just show you guys from how we're incorporating the land use into our transportation planning. That was kind of something similar that we did with Bardstown. If you remember, I presented on our Bardstown project before about looking at new routes around Bardstown, and we shared, I think, some public engagement techniques and tools as an example of that at one of our previous conferences. So this was kind of a lot on the planning side. Going to highway design, oh wait, there's one other thing we want to share, Jarrod. It was the crash data.
Right.
Sorry. There's a ton of stuff that we have through all of this that we could share on. And poor Brian, yesterday we were working on practicing a little bit, and he helped us start up the GoToMeeting, and then it's like, I'll just minimize and let you guys do that. And we ended up talking for like a really long time. So, so we'll try to be shorter today. The crash data. This was kind of a cool feature of it that right there, you can see it kind of provides it by clusters. So we pulled into the area. I mean, this is a pretty large study area. And you can map by manner of collision, so by angle or rear end, and kind of that intensity will show up by a cluster by dots. So the larger the dot, the more that type of crash has occurred there. But you can still drill down to see the number or the locations of those. So you can see it on kind of that higher plane perspective, or drill down to the more local street level. So that's kind of a cool thing. And if you have the information in there, you can sort it out by severity or by weather or by lighting. So again, it depends on how you want to slice or dice the data, that you can put it in here and then sort it out by these different types of tools. So this was kind of a neat application of it to look at those higher level types of crashes. So let's switch over to highway design for a minute. And I'm not going to go through all the details of project design, development, phase 1 engineering with you guys, but this was just to go through this and say that it doesn't have to stop at planning. The tools and the story map in the ArcGIS translate really well to continuing the project along. This is one HMB has been working on. This was a project kickoff meeting for Oldham County doing a design project. And it was the same thing. It's not a static map, it's interactive, it's built on layers, and the tabs have the agenda going across there. The crash history one, that was one that we wanted to look at as well. And that's just another way that we can share the data in the heat maps. So we had, in the previous one, we had those crash clusters and the big dots. This one, we're sharing the data in a heat map. So if you are at the higher level, you can see where that higher intensity color is. But then if you want to zoom in a little bit closer, you can see what those look like. And you can see the higher colors at the intersections, which makes sense that where you have more conflict points, you're having a higher number of crashes. But if you want to look at an individual one, you can click on it and it'll pull up all that information that's associated with it. If it occurred in dry, wet weather, all of those things. Let's see. What else on this one, Jarrod?
I think that's it on this one.
Okay. Well, we will go to the public outreach tab and share one more project example. So I think we're getting close to covering a decent section of Kentucky, because we had our kind of northeastern project. We had Owensboro going slightly west. This one is in Louisville, and there's been a lot of projects going on lately, looking at different interstates in Louisville. So we were asked to look at I-64 to help with some of the congestion issues. This one here is developed specifically for a public meeting. We weren't able to have an in-person public meeting with this, and the Transportation Cabinet started hosting virtual public meetings. So they asked us to put together a story map that goes through our development process and provides some information on the study to ask for input on the front end about issues and things they have concerns about. So yes, you'll see a lot of text on this. This is not meant to be a presentation that's really given to a group of people, but more or less for people to work through it at their own pace, to read about the study and have some information. So hopefully you can see that it's fairly well organized with what the background is, roadway information. Something that we haven't touched on in other ones was the environmental information. So when you click on that one, we have different environmental features that are identified through here. So if you there's some high-level concerns, particularly related with the tunnel area and with some of the environmental features. So each of those can be pulled up here so you can see where the study area is and what surrounds or impacts the corridor as you go through each of these pieces here. So that was something that I thought was helpful to go through as you're considering some of the potential impacts. You know, what you're most concerned about with the corridor is to know, well, what is surrounding it and how much of an impact could it possibly have on what we end up doing there. So Jarrod's just been clicking through a couple of the different environmental categories that we have on here. And at this point, we said for improvement strategies, we're looking at just a couple of broad areas. Widening has been an option a lot in the past, but we're getting more and more constrained with what we can do. So we need to be a bit more creative on our transportation solutions. So this was one that we were asked to look at. We do have the tunnels pictured there that are a point of congestion, but to look at some of the transportation system management operations tools that we could potentially help with alleviating some of the congestion issues. And we were asking input on kind of the broad range of categories for what people might be agreeable to do on that. So yeah, if you click on the survey, and we provided examples of what some of those transportation system management categories could be. So this is the survey that we had as part of this project. And this is a little bit different review of this as well, that you have a survey 123 tool that can be embedded into the story map. So again, trying to make it a click through very quickly, quick survey that can be done in 5 minutes or so. So we're asking people to provide input on the environmental issues, and if you click on, I guess, to the next one, that there's a couple different boxes there. What types of improvements do you support? And always giving people that opportunity for additional comments on it. And we still did have a place where if you want to be more spatially located, that you could drop information points in there. One other thing that has come up when we've presented and discussed some of these project examples is for public meetings, the ADA requirement. So there are options for that there are some features that can allow the story maps to read the text aloud to you. Another way that we've discussed with the cabinet about combating some of those issues is that if you need to have a physical copy, we have, for another study that we're not showing here, provided a actual survey. So we've taken it from 123 and then placed it in a Word document so you can print it out and have it available at the district office or at other locations if people need to pick it up and they don't have internet accessibility. So trying to be as inclusive as possible with these tools, recognizing that there are some issues sometimes as we try different things. Jarrod, if you go to, I guess, the couple of maps under public outreach, one of the interesting things with this is it gives you how many on the date, like how many responses you're getting as you go along. So it was interesting to us to note that we had a huge spike on it, and we're like, well, why do we have such a spike on that date? Well, that was when the local officials had sent out some of the information and the link on this. So they had forwarded to their constituents the study and how to provide input on it. We had a secondary bump kind of towards the end of Facebook. So we did a Facebook boost through the district, which basically targets people within a certain area and kind of pops it out on their social media, say, hey, here's the survey that's going on. Why I think this is just interesting to note is that this was kind of on the first round of engagement. So knowing how we targeted audiences for this particular study, Jarrod, if you go to the next figure there, kind of helps guide us for later in the study that we asked how they heard about it. And for the most part, it was social media. So when we do our next round of engagement, having that focused and targeted attack with social media, I think will be helpful with this, that we know that that's one of the best ways to communicate on this study to get the word out. So it's just kind of using the information, collecting the information, and then being able to use that information to help us maybe later on in the study or for future studies is kind of helpful. So I've gone over quite a few, I guess, project examples on this, and we've kind of had the same type of format as we've shown through here, because actually this is a story map. So we have those tabs along the side, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then each of these was a story map. So Jarrod's also provided number 7, some additional tools, and there's a couple different features and fun things that we've discovered along the way that can be incorporated in here, and there's different ways that you can set up these story maps. So let's go to number 7 on that.
Okay. One thing I'd like to mention just about the surveys is that we used Survey 123, which is an ArcGIS survey platform. So it integrates really well. It comes with the ArcGIS suite, and all of this data that we had was live, as they were coming in. So it was really, really nice to be able to see what the response was over the month that we had it, and then be able to export that easily instead of having to go in and just take, the data from a different website, export it all, and then manipulate it through Excel to make these graphs yourself. So that just saved some time and was cool to have during the time that the survey was open. And also, like Lindsay mentioned, this is a story map within a story map. All of these are basically linked in there. So all these maps, the survey information, it can all be separated out to best fit what your needs are. So for instance, the survey looks really good on a phone. Somebody can do the survey on a phone. As far as looking at all of this information on a phone, it's a little bit difficult, but you do have that ability to separate these all out. So I just wanted to cover a couple of those things. And then, like Lindsay mentioned, we have found a few additional tools that could be helpful. Some of these story maps were some of the first ones that we did, so we weren't entirely sure of the capabilities of ArcGIS, but we're finding out that there's just so much that we don't know still. And also I get an email, seems like once a week or every other week, about, hey, look at this new feature from Esri, who makes ArcGIS. So I'm just going to go through a couple of different of these other tools that y'all might find useful. So first thing I wanted to show is just that there's other themes. We kind of have stuck with this similar theme of story maps just because it's worked well, but this is another type of story map. So I just wanted to kind of show you all there's different themes and styles that you can use for whatever you need to do. And I'll go over a couple other tools here. So this was a pretty neat tool here called Swipe. You can just see the before and after interactive, whether it's features or an aerial or even pictures. So that was a pretty cool tool. Webhooks. Sorry, Lindsay, were you gonna?
Oh, I was just gonna say the slider tool. I don't know why, but if you get on there and you keep moving it back and forth, it's super fun. So nothing like actual technical that. I'm just saying it's really fun to move it back and forth.
Yeah, and it's really cool if you have some like super historic imagery to see how your community has changed over the years. Really cool. And there's different types in here as well. You know, horizontal, vertical, the spyglass. So cool stuff there. Webhooks, they are a tool that you can use if someone submits a survey. Then this tool will take that data and then send it to a lot of other different programs. So in this example, you can see it makes a spreadsheet and then sends an email. You can choose what it takes from that survey to send or export to an Excel sheet, or it can start an entirely new process. And that's also not just for survey 123, but several other things. And possibilities are endless there, but you don't have to go and keep looking to see, well, did someone fill this out? So that's a pretty cool use. This is something that we didn't use, but it's a new tool from ArcGIS. It's a document viewer or attachment viewer. So this is from our AA highway example. This would just be kind of a place to store documents that are tied to your features that would make it easy for people to go in and download a certain set of documents or attachments that you have to map features. This is an interactive image or a document or a figure, anything that's not necessarily a map, you can treat as a map and highlight different parts of that document. So for this example, I used a traffic impact study figure. And so you can kind of guide people through a document and show information about certain areas of the document and zoom in and out, things like that. Another tool is called Insights. This kind of takes all the data that you're getting from those layers. This is not our example. This is just a general ArcGIS example, but it's something that you can do and can basically manipulate a lot of different tables and maps and things interactively to show people the data in a really interactive way that updates as your layers and your data updates. One other thing I wanted to mention about the layers, since we're pulling them live, anytime they get updated by KYTC or Logic, it's really nice that we don't have to worry about it being up to date. So in the past, we've gone directly to KYTC's website, downloaded the layer, and then every time we have a new project, just make sure that they haven't updated or there's no changes. So this saves a lot of time and headaches and making sure everything's up to date. The last thing I wanted to show is ArcGIS hubs. So this is kind of like a website in a way, but where Insights shows your data live, this is more of a place to go and then download data from an agency. So for instance, in this example, this is KYTC, one of their layers. And you can see all of the different attributes and click on those, and they have different pieces of data that you can view. There's two more types of hubs. These are other examples from GIS, but for an example, this agency created a website or hub where they can store a lot of their story maps directly on here. So, you know, throughout a project or throughout any kind of thing that you wanted to show to the public or whoever, you can have all of it in one place in a pretty cool, compact way. And then there's one other hub of a county, and it basically just works like a website, like I said, but it's all in the ArcGIS space, and you can put live statistics and things on your website pretty easily, just linking them to your data in your ArcGIS data. So that's all for the additional tools. I know we're running close to the end of time here, so we'll leave it for any questions. If anybody has any.
Hopefully, maybe at this point, like yesterday, we were kind of like, oh man, we had like a lot of information to share, and everybody's just going to be ArcGIS out. That's really not a word, but it's just, I think it's just more or less that, like I said, I think just trying to come up with some ideas and be like, oh, that would be cool. Maybe we should do that, and it doesn't have to be somebody who's just completely well versed in ArcGIS and can only do these. That it seems fairly easy once you've started one, that you can manipulate it, put your information in. And I think it provides a nice alternative to PowerPoint too, that we seem to get a little burned out on having those static presentations. That this makes it a little bit more fun, and you can be more interactive with your audience. And we also have done a lot of these. Now, we did several of our meetings through Zoom, and we were able to do the interactive polls through Zoom. Brian and I talked about it yesterday, that GoToMeeting, I don't think offers that feature, but there are some options that you can use if you want to throw in some interactive polls and things like that during your presentations. That you can add that on as a feature, but we didn't integrate it with this for today, but just something else to keep in mind. So yeah, we're open for anybody else that might have questions about it, or if you have any follow-up, feel free to email me or Jarrod. Type a email in there if you need to get hold of me.
Yeah.
This has all been some really interesting stuff. It's like we were talking offline. I don't get to do as much GIS stuff anymore, and so where this has come from, just since I stopped doing as much GIS, it's just amazing, and it's just really fascinating to me. So really appreciate you taking time to explain that to us today. Oh, we got some chats here. Okay, some emails. Okay, cool.
Just our emails.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
I'd like to mention also, these can come, you can export all of these maps and things that you do. I know that's been a concern as well. What if when it comes time to make a report, how do you print this stuff? You can take all these maps and then just basically transfer it over to the desktop version and print an 8.5 by 11 or whatever you need to do there. So it's very easy to go back and forth. And actually, I find it easier to work in ArcGIS online than I did on the desktop version. It's faster. And also, I actually go and look at all this data. I find myself, we have a general Kentucky map that just has all the data from different sources in there. And I'll just go to that quickly if I need to know, well, what's the speed limit here? Or, all that different kinds of data. It's just easy to access. So
it's kind of amazing. I worked for the cabinet in Frankfurt about 5 years ago for a couple of years. And yeah, I agree with Brian. Some of this stuff is really, really great. In my humble opinion, the one problem that the cabinet had when they were doing public outreach was doing it in engineer talk and not thinking about what it was that the general public wanted to know, as opposed to getting, the throat high in statistics and numbers and data, so I can see how this could make it a lot more interesting for just the average Joe.
Well, one of the things that we always would see when we go to public meetings is the first thing that people gravitate towards is that map that's laid on the table or that's on a chart, and they want to look for their house, and they want to see where their house is compared to the new road or whatever is being proposed. So that was kind of sparked the idea of, well, let's go to more of a spatial orientation with the AA and show you the map that you want to see, and then you can put your points in like that.
And I agree with that 100. I agree with that 100%, 1,000%. I saw the same thing happen over and over. When I was doing comp plans too. People want to know what's really important to them is how is this going to affect me. you know, not to put it in a selfish way or anything, but that's what people want to know.
Absolutely. I mean, we had so much outreach on the Bardstown project because they were very concerned about what was going to happen to their property. So we have to be able to be prepared to listen and answer questions and make sure that we're hopefully trying to guide them that we're not Bardstown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And help them along with that. Kevin had a question on here. Is it compatible with AutoCAD programs? Say an entity has a lot of information done by CAD, but obviously it doesn't have the interactiveness as this program. I don't know. Do you have an answer for that, Jarrod, on the AutoCAD?
Not with AutoCAD. I don't use AutoCAD. We use MicroStation. I'm not sure if AutoCAD has the same capabilities as MicroStation. I would assume that it does. For the most part, what we've done is export our MicroStation line work to Google Earth files, KMZs, and that is what these are actually. And then since some of our highway guys weren't as GIS savvy, they just created it. They created it in MicroStation, gave it to me, and then I have, you know, input it in here. As far as what AutoCAD can do, I can research it and get back to you if you just send me an email sometime next week, and I can look into that for you.
I mean, I think it'd probably be if you had some information AutoCAD and wanted to put it in here, you could kind of like we're adding in our own layers and things like that. But yeah, as Jarrod said, we don't typically work in AutoCAD, like our planning group as much, just because KYTC, we work with them a lot more. And the MicroStation, Open Roads is where we've been going with things at this point.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
We want to know that Bardstown is the bourbon capital of the world. You know, I don't think that when I was working on that project, I ever had a bourbon when I was in Bardstown.
So you missed out. You're going to have to get another. Yeah.
We're trying
Have you ever had bourbon?
Why on earth would you go to Bardstown if you weren't going to drink bourbon?
We're trying to figure out a way to go to the Bourbon Festival during that project and justify it. So I'll need to make it down there.
It's all in the timing.
We were just working so hard on the project.
All right. Well, Lindsay and Jarrod, I just want to thank you all for coming on today and presenting this information to us. Again, just a reminder that this is CM certified, so you can find the link over in the chat section to the event. Or if you have problems, just feel free to shoot me an email, brian.davis@littleky.gov, and I can send you that. Right now, for whatever reason, you can't search and find the thing on the APA page. Amy and I will continue to work on that and try to figure that out. So again, appreciate everybody being on here today. And then be sure to join us on Monday, October 12th at 3 o'clock for our next session, which is legalizing the COV with the Neighborhood Development Code, which, as you didn't know, Covington currently are in a moratorium, and because they are between development codes. This new development code that we're going to learn about on Monday doesn't take effect until next Thursday. So we're going to get a kind of a sneak peek on what's going on with their new development code on Monday. So again, thanks for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day and happy planning to all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all for your time, and thank you, Brian.
Brian.